This is Jeremy from Team Alive 1, and this is a rebuttal to Paul Chek's The 10 Commandments or Spirituality, You Decide, part number 2. He starts out in this video talking about love being a code, and I found that very interesting because the definition of code, according to this online dictionary that I got, is a systematically arranged and comprehensive collection of laws. A systematic collection of regulations and rules of procedure or contact. So, according to this definition, a code is actually rules of conduct. And I thought that that was very interesting because it seems to me that the point of a lot of things that he's saying is that if God existed, He would be infinite love and He would have no regulations or no rules of contact. But then he said love is a code. So I would be interested to know what Paul's definition of a code is here. Because according to the dictionary definition, it is rules and regulations of conduct. Then he goes into talking about body, soul, and mind. This is different than what the Bible describes. The Bible describes us as being body, soul, and spirit. And there are a few verses that make this very clear, and the deeper that you study into it, the more you'll understand. And I'd like to recommend here for anybody that is interested as a Christian to go deeper into this study to look up Andrew Wommack's free audio teaching called Spirit, Soul, and Body. This teaching has been transformational in my life. Andrew also recommended a woman named Carolyn Leaf, who has a book called Who Switched Off My Brain. And you can pick this book up at your local library or buy a copy of it on Amazon. She also has video series and audio series too that you can get from Carolyn. Very good stuff, expanding on the body's definition of body, soul, and spirit. The spirit, according to the Bible, is the inner part of man, the reality part of man that will last forever. The soul, according to the Bible, is our emotions, our character, what makes us up as what is described as being the mind, I believe, by Paul. The Bible calls the mind or the character and the emotional state of mankind as being the soul. The body is the outward part that we interact with other human beings. We cannot interact with a soul and spirit of another human being without interacting with them physically. If their body's dead, we can't talk to them and hold a conversation. This is how the Bible breaks it down. Next, Paul says that the mind can't understand God. And I agree in some ways to this. However, as I touched on in the first video series, there are things like creation that can help us in some ways to get an understanding of God. However, what I do believe what Paul says, that the mind cannot comprehend an infinite God, the holy, holy, holy God, that the angels, every time they looked at him, they saw a different aspect. Our mind is not capable of understanding this. Now, if you look at an example of this, it would be outer space. You and I cannot understand how space can have no beginning and no end. Is there a wall at the end of space that you get to and says the end, a brick wall? No, as far as we understand it, we can't wrap our minds around it, but space has no beginning and no ending. Outer space is infinite and goes on forever. How much more is God that created outer space? The word universe means a single spoken sentence. The Bible, of course, teaches that God spoke the universe and the world into existence. So the universe, single spoken sentence, is a very interesting way to describe that. But our mind cannot grasp there being no end to space. It's the same way with God. There are some things about God, yes, that our minds cannot understand. Paul talks about any god that can be fought over as paganism. And he referred to the Abrahamic religions of Christianity, Judaism, and the Muslims. and he said that they are the most warring. They claim that there's one God and that it is the only God, which I agree with that statement, and that they are the most warring tribes on the planet, and I also agree with that statement. However, I do not agree that just because somebody claims to be a follower of the God of the Bible, that every action that they do can then reflect back on the God that they say they believe in. And I will use Paul Chek for an example. I could say that I am a follower of Paul Chek. I could take Paul Chek's classes and go to Paul Chek's online courses and do all of those things, which I do. I plan on doing. However, everything that I say or do is not a reflection on Paul Chek just because I listen to Paul Chek's tapes and I quote Paul Chek and I say that I follow Paul Chek. It's the same way with anybody that says, well, I follow the God of the Bible, but they do things that the God of the Bible does not condone. Jesus, for instance, told us to our enemies that we're supposed to give them a drink of water if they're thirsty. If they're hungry, give them something to eat. This is the commandment to us. Jesus said that we're to love others. We're to forgive. Jesus also says in the Bible, the New Testament, it says, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of a good report. If there's any virtue or any praise, think on these things. And of course, as Christians, we tend not to do that. We tend not to think on what things are good, and if there's anything that's pure and just and holy. We tend not to do that. And those are commandments given by God, but yet as Christians or as humans, we fall short. And I believe, just like Paul said, love is a code. I believe that. Love is a code. There is conduct that is valuable and needful in a relationship. If I was in a relationship with Paul Chek and I was seeing him every day, there would be things in that relationship that Paul Chek would require of me. I couldn't just come into his house and smash his windows out and say, hey, we're friends and there's unconditional love. I couldn't steal his car and wreck it. There's certain things, and Paul says, well, I love everybody, and it's all about unconditional love, but relationship, love is a code. There are codes of conduct to every loving relationship, and it is the same way with God and His creation. An example of the Christian faith being the most killing or warring tribes, I would have to say that I am anti-religious, though I am spiritual. Christianity as a religion has sought power over men, has sought power over the finances of men, and has sought power over even the governments of men. If you look into the Jesuits and the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church I call the Catholic kill machine. If you want to understand this, all you need to do is look into the Anabaptists and look into a book called The Martyr's Mirror, or a more popular book would be Fox's Book of Martyrs, that accounts what the Catholic Church, the religion of Christianity, not Christianity, the spirituality, does to those that don't believe like them. They kill you because it is a power-hungry, political, financial, and controlling system that wants to make slaves out of the minds of men. That's why they took the Bible away from men for so long. They were afraid that some would get it and understand the true message of love, forgiveness, grace, and what the Bible calls the gospel, the good news. The Ten Commandments, then Paul ends it up saying, comes from God. You see Moses holding the plaques up and smashing them. But Paul says his God, Paul's definition of God, this zero, does not speak and doesn't have the capability of speech. Well, I would say, in my definition, when I look around at creation, I would say that God is speaking all the time. God is always speaking. And to say that the God that created the world, that created the soil that Paul gets so deeply into, and I've learned so much from Paul's teaching on the soil, when I look at the relationship between the fungus and the mycelium and the plants and the systems of exchange that are there, that is one just gigantic level of research that you could spend forever on, and that's just the dirt itself. Look at the rest of creation. Obviously a God that is this powerful and this wise and this infinite has the power of speech, like lesser creatures that He created, man. To think that as man we have the power of speech but God does not, I think is really not wise. This is Jeremy from Team Alive 1. This has been my rebuttal to Paul Chek's The 10 Commandments or Spirituality, Part 2. Have a great day.